Oi, you know what time it is? You're tuned in listening to That Aussie Metal Guy. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of his content when it drops. And remember, stay brutal, you mad dogs. Roof!
G'day, hey, how you all going? It's Jai, that Aussie Metal Guy here with Crannk.com and with that metalstation.com. So tonight, wherever you are in the world, it is with great pleasure that I'm having a chat with Al Anderson, reggae, rock, royalty. And for me, this is an absolute pleasure. Yes, I am a metalhead, but I love all sorts of music. And for me, Bob Marley, reggae, and that was a huge influence on me as a 16-year-old lad, first discovering weed, and then music being such a huge formative time for me at 16. I was rocking out to Bob Marley and Jimi Hendrix and all those great guitarists of the time. So when this email come across, Al, I was super excited to do it. So thank you so very much.
Yeah, we have a lot in common. I love metal music. I love hard rock music. I love reggae, jazz, improvisational, acoustic music. I love everything.
Yeah, well, you've had an amazing career. Some people may know you from the original Wailers, but your career has been absolutely unreal. Like, I think it was Berklee College of Music you attended as well. I think you started trombone, then moved into the guitar, was it?
Yeah, this is what happened. I did an interview with somebody years ago, and they asked me, have you have any like professional training playing guitar? I said, yeah, I used to sneak into Berklee, sneak into the seminars and the rehearsal rooms. I could rehearse. I always brought my guitar. There was guys like Pat Metheny, Al Di Meola, Mick Goodrick was the head teacher then. And so I would steal lessons and go to seminars for free. My friend had a full tuition with them. And so in the early days when Berklee was just conceived, they never asked for, there wasn't like ID and identification like, Harvard and these bigger other schools, So it was basically like, there was Major Holly and all these incredible, Chick Corea was there, Joe Henderson, you name it. All these amazing jazz and progressive teachers were at Berklee. And I didn't have the money to go there. I was working in a bakery, cutting bread and delivering milk and cheese and meats to the populace of Boston. And I was selling guitars to guys like Brad and Joe Perry from Aerosmith. They were like my good buddies. And I was into buy, selling, and trading vintage instruments from a really early age, from the early 70s. And these were some of the people that were in Boston at that time. And I happened to be in Boston, living and working at a bakery, but sneaking into the courses at Berklee until they made like identification cards, which was 6 months later. So I got 6 months of a free education doing all the seminars, rehearsal rooms, private tutoring from some of the greatest musicians, which made me the musician today. Did I go to Berklee Music? Yes. But did I sneak into the courses like really roguely? Yes, I did. So I'm not really a Berklee guy, but I got some Berklee teaching because of how the structure was. They just didn't ask for identification. They didn't ask for any, hey, did you pay? Or they just let me in. And until they developed the structure on how all the students were there, to make because this was the early days. They had just opened up, and I got lucky. But I wasn't, to answer your question, no, I wasn't like a Berklee student, but I did get some teaching there.
That's such a cool story, isn't it? It wouldn't happen today, that's for sure.
No.
What was it like growing up around that time, learning guitar? Because you're saying you work in a bakery, so it would have been early mornings, the grind with the guitar, then, going to Berklee, then kind of rolling. Yeah.
6 o'clock in the morning till like maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I would go over to Berklee afterwards. And, the good thing was is that I was getting like $600 a week. I was 20, 19 and a half, 20 or something like that, and around 20 or so. And it was really amazing that this is like 1970, 71. And there was all these amazing places to play, like the Boston Tea Party and the little small clubs, KKDs and all that stuff, where Aerosmith always played. So I would go over there and see them at the Boston Tea Party and so on. So I became friends with like Joe, Brad, and Tom Hamilton and Joey Kramer. You know, they were like just average guys. They had a really nice apartment. And when I would go to New York on my days off, I'd go to New York and Syracuse, buy some old Les Pauls, and just bring them back to Boston. And Joe and Brad would buy everything I had.
Yeah.
So I was prospering and doing really well. And not only that, I worked in a bakery where I got free eggs, free milk, and free bread and stuff. So I was able to get like an apartment on right near Aerosmith on Beacon, on Mass Avenue, actually,
Yep.
and associate with all these really cool people like Traffic, Freeze, Carlos
Yes.
Santana. Met. I played with Peter Green, you know, from Fleetwood Mac, and so I met all these amazing musicians in Boston, which made me want to go to London, where they were from, and that was pretty much the beginning, starting in Boston, uh, sneaking into Berklee, working at. I was a baker. I was working in a bakery, man.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't playing. I wasn't in no band. Nothing was happening, but I had a steady salary, and I was playing guitar as much as I could from, you know, all the guys that I jammed with at Berklee in the rehearsal rooms. So my skills were getting better, and I was getting some really serious teaching.
Yep.
So I was really a lucky guy. And then I went over to England, and my whole life changed from when I left the States to go to England.
Yeah, well, what was it like, that move from the States over to England as well there? Because you were heavily into rock and stuff like that. And you kind of went over to England and then started to kind of transition into reggae as well. So tell us a little bit about that part of your life.
It was like I met Chris Wood, which was a saxophone player for Traffic, Jim Capaldi, and Steve Winwood, and Paul Cossa from Free. You know this guy?
Yeah.
The lead guitarist of Free, All
Yeah.
Right Now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool as.
Yo, man, this guy was playing a 59 Les Paul, and it was like an iced tea tobacco sunburst, and I lost my. And then I met Peter Green, who had the Greenie,
Yep.
that 59, and I was like, wow, this is it. This is like the mothership to outer space here, because these are the guitars that I really love. They weren't really hard to get hold of in the early 70s, and they're worth about $300,000 or $400,000 now, and I was getting them back in these days around $3,000 from a guy named Richie Friedman at We Buy Guitars on 48th Street. Like if you go to 48th Street now in New York City, it's a graveyard.
Yeah.
I mean, all those stores, Manny's and We Buy and Rudy's, all those amazing guitar shops were there. Electro Harmonics was on 48th Street. You know, Mike Matthews put his whole establishment there. I used to get pedals from Mike.
Yep.
I bought like a 1960 Les Paul standard that Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck had their eyes on.
Wow.
Because everybody used to go to the store, and I was an avid guy, and I knew Richie Friedman really well. So I got to meet like some really serious British musicians, which made me, they said, hey, come over to London. You know, there's a lot of work over there. There's a place for you. And Paul cost up the lead guitarist for Free, and Woody were the two main guys. And then I had met Chris Blackwell, who was the CEO of Island Records.
Yeah.
So then, you know, I got kind of tired of, there was a lot of weird shit going on in the States with our social society.
Oh, yeah.
So then it was, you know, it was like, there was a lot of racism happening. Yep. And a lot of cultures weren't being respected. And I kind of wanted a lot more. And I know in England, England's got not the greatest history along with us, but at the same time, there were a lot more progression going on musically with young colored musicians in England, you know, during
definitely.
This was the punk times, you know, just the early pre-punk.
Yep.
Reggae was flourishing, and progressive music. The Stones had like African guys playing percussion on their music. And I was like, wow, this is fucking hip as fuck, you
Yeah.
know? And, you know, you had the Beatles, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, hey, I'm all in. You got the Beatles and Stones, Roxy Music, Traffic, Free. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm on my way to London. You
Yeah,
know?
that's it. Fuck this shit. I'm getting out of the US. I do not blame you at all. Like someone who looks back at it now, it kind of it brings me to tears watching some of the stuff that kind of was happening over there in the US at the time. And I'm an Australian. I know we didn't have it any better over here. And like I have
Yeah.
orders as well. And I look back at the history they've gone through and it brings a tear to my eye as well. So to get out of the US and to kind of get over to London, it would have been kind of a really great experience for you as a person, but also as a musician. And then opening up those doors, and then the London music scene at that time, all those musicians you just mentioned would have just been an absolutely amazing, mind-blowing, really formative experience for you personally and career-wise. And then kind of leading on to getting a phone call from, you know, Bob going, I want to bring kind of a rock sound over to the band, and kind of hitting you up personally. What was kind of that like for you?
I was living in Putney near Hammersmith, and I think going into London, like around Ladbroke Grove, where I lived first when I came over there, I lived around Malcolm McLaren. And it was like guys like Billy Idol, Spandau Ballet, The Flash. I used to see Joe Sturmer and those guys in the market all the time, buying like vegetables and fruits and stuff. And I used to see the bowling guy from T-Rex. He was in the market. And he was, man, it was a trip. Guys were wearing like snakeskin shoes, velvet jackets. You know, Hendrix was still on the scene, but I never met him there. I got a Hendrix story for you, but we'll get into that later. Let's talk about London. So it was such a hip scene, and Boy George was doing his thing. Malcolm McLaren had that. He was basically one of the early British rappers, and the Clash had their hardcore punk thing going on, and they had reggae. There's Alton Ellis, Dennis Brown, Jimmy Cliff, but I didn't know anything about Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer. That hadn't happened yet. So being that I had the opportunity to meet Steve Winwood from Traffic, and Jim Capaldi became like the drummer, my really good friend, along with Chris Wood, was the saxophone player. And then the group that opened for Traffic was Free, and the lead guitarist and me became like solitary brothers, man. Like Paul Kossoff is the reason why we're talking today, because when I first went over to England from Boston, I was able to get a job. I was around Maynard Ferguson's jazz group, Bud Parks, and guys like Bud and Martin Drover and Goo, a saxophone player. They put me up. And then this was in, wow, what's the name of that place? Wimbledon. I lived in Wimbledon first, right next to the tennis arena there. Yeah. And one day I woke up and I saw a guy with a silver Rolls Royce. He was teeing off. And then Goo he goes, that's Sean Connery. I said, no way. So I crept up to where the car was, and it was Sean Connery teeing off. And I was like, this is really big. Here's James Bond. I'm in, you know. And I eventually moved into town, into central London. And I was working with Oswald. Was the first group I recorded with. There was a song called Freedom Fighters, which was a #1 for Richard Branson's Virgin Records. So I started working with Richard Branson first, had a #1. You know, this was within a year. It just went from yeah to takeoff.
Yep.
And here I am in London working with Virgin Records, who's really big. They had Tubular Bells, which was a huge one of the first 8 million selling vinyl records on the planet. And then after Oswald had this big hit, they wanted to leave Delroy Washington, who was a singer-songwriter, and form their own band, which they did called Oswald. I didn't join that group, so I went from Virgin to a lot of island record parties where there was like Nico and Eno, Brian Eno, and Jimmy Page would be there, early Jimmy Page and Roxy Music. And I'm going like, wow, this place is fucking hip as fuck. And so then when I was in Boston, I had met these guys already. So they were kind of familiar with me. And the CEO was Chris Blackwell from Island Records. And he had like a lot of other sub companies that was really interesting to see how this guy thought. And he was English born Jamaican. He born in England, grew up in Jamaica. So he thought like a Jamaican. He spoke like a Jamaican. He smoked like a Jamaican. He was Jamaican. And so I was really interested in him because he wasn't like all the other CEOs and record distributors. So I liked the groups he had on his label, and I ended up being a tape op there. And that's how I met Bob. Tape ops clean the floor, they clean the board off, they pour tea, they make sandwiches for the artists that are working in Island Studios. And like one day I was in the studio and it was Elton John and Jimmy Page, and I poured tea for them. You know, I poured their tea and I'm going like, I can't make tea. And I just remember the engineer going, hey, it's not bad for a Yankee. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow. You know, so they gave me that opportunity to meet all these really heavy people. These are early 70s.
Yeah.
You know, early 70s. And Led Zeppelin was going on to do their thing. And Elton John had Tumbleweed Connection and all that stuff. So
it's a different time back then too. Thinking of trying to do that now, it just wouldn't be able to. The industry isn't the same like that now. It just wouldn't be.
I'm glad that you're right on top of it. Are you a guitar? You play guitar?
No, I've been just a massive
musician?
music lover for many, many, many years. It's kind of been my go-to. I do a podcast with a guy who's in a band, and I've just had so many muso friends all these years, and it's just been my passion for me has always been music, as is yours.
Yeah. So you understand me. So
Definitely.
after meeting the CEO and getting back together with Traffic and Free are my really good friends in London now. In fact, they gave me a place to live. You know, when I was living in Rains Park near Wimbledon, that was with Maynard Ferguson's jazz group, those guys. So I went from a jazz scene straight into a progressive like rock group scene, you know, like selling guitars to these guys from some of the most iconic groups today. Like Paul Costa became my really good friend. Jim Capaldi, Steve Winwood, and Chris Wood, the saxophone player, we were really close because they were always at Island. Island Records had parties. They were opening up new studios. And it was just like, there was jerk chicken there and rice and peas and plantain. They had all the Jamaican food. They had herb. They were just fucking, it was killer. So I got to really get tight with Paul Costa. I used to go over his house, and Paul had a large collection of Les Pauls. I'm a Les Paul Stratocaster, Telecaster maniac. You know, I like all the other modern guitars, but these three guitars are the ones that I grew up on. And I had like really old one. The first guitar I ever bought around 16, 17 was a 64 butterscotch Telecaster with a Bigsby. Wow. And this thing was like, I had a Vox AC30 with a tone bender and a Clyde McCoy wah-wah. So I was like Clapton. I was like Beck. I was everybody because that's what they were using then, you know. Hendrix, you know, he had the Clyde McCoy. So it was really nice to know that these people gave me an opportunity to be able to socialize with guys like Paul Kossoff, and there's Jimmy Page, there's Elton John, there's Spandau Ballet, there's, you know, all these crazy artists that were around the island scene, you know, Nico and Eno, Brian Eno's amazing producer. So I got to learn from these guys and absorb all the energy. So Paul Kossoff said, hey man, come over to my house and let's just talk guitars. And he's got a 55 Les Paul, 56, 57, 58, 59, 66, 162. He's got the whole line of that. He's got a 54 Strat. He's got a 55 Tele, 56, 50. He's got every Marshall amplifier. And I love Marshalls, you know. He just injected all the energies of the best iconic vintage guitars, Strats, Teles, Les Pauls, Marshall amplifiers. And so he was my teacher. And
of course, you're going to want to go hang out with him and jam with him for sure.
All the time. And he always had like a good jar of beer there and a good spliff. Paul Kossoff was a loving, friendly guy. He was so shy. It took him away from us. You know, he died really early, and he was just a beautiful guy. He was really shy. He didn't like playing in front of, like, you know, 50, 40,000 people. He didn't dig it. Yeah. He liked little small clubs, and he was really shy, a little small guy. But if you ever see him, he looks like a lion playing that Les Paul. And I met Peter Green and all these guys too, and they were really kind to me. So that made me want to go over to England, because I was getting a better appreciation as just socially, as a human being, from British people than I was in New York City. New York City was a nightmare. Yeah. You know, we had a lot of problems with social, with a lot of prejudice and stuff. And I didn't want to deal with that, because in these early days, I was Krishna. I was a Krishna devotee. Yep. Of Hare Krishna. Yep. So, and then the Beatles were into that, because I went to the concert for Bangladesh at Madison Square Garden for George Harrison. And I had run away from my parents. I was homeless. And I met some Krishnas. They gave me soup. They gave me sticky rice with mango and mango lassi and a chapati. Yeah. And they said, well, I look kind of scruffy, because I was trying to get into the concert for Bangladesh. There was a famine in Bangladesh, and George thought that to put on this show and donate the money from the show. Yeah. And it was a big, big thing, you know. And the Krishnas invited me to come and stay in the Krishna temple and be a devotee. And I was like, wow, I'm into that. So that set me up right there. That my voyage to England was after that. Yep. And after the concert from Bangladesh, I went to the Krishna temple. I started studying transcendental meditation. I was on my journey, and that journey from there got me to meet Bob Marley from Paul Kossoff. Paul Kossoff I was at his house. Chris Blackwell, the CEO of Island, called him to do the Nazi Dread sessions. Yes. But he had too much to drink. And so he said, oh, there's an American kid here named Al, and he's a tape op at Island. And so Chris says, oh, I think I know him. Send him on if you can't come. So it wasn't going to be me. It was going to be him to do that album. So he played Catch a Fire and Burnin' for me before I went down to Basing Street Studio. Like, this is like 1972, 3. Yep. Wow. You know. And there's Bob Marley. There's Chris Blackwell. I'm in the studio. So Chris said, I want you to do 5, 6 songs for Bob. This is his solo record. And I said, well, do me a favor. Just run the tape. Let me hear all the music. So they played 2 or 3 minutes of each song, each 6 songs. And so then in the beginning, when I first started playing, I was playing a little bit too progressively, too hard. Yeah. You know, it was like, hey, this is too edgy. And I think I heard Chris say, I'm hearing a lot of distortion. I said, what distortion? He goes, distortion. I said, distortion? Oh, yeah, that. I said, okay, I'll clean it up. So I cleaned up my signal, got a little more bluesing and country, because that's what I heard. I heard blues and country on Bob Marley's music. And then they played all the tracks, and slowly but surely, an hour later, I was finished with all 6 songs. And they said, "Man, you really fast." And I said, "Well, I really like what I hear." So I went into the studio, and they were like, Ray, have a drink. I had to smoke. I didn't talk to Bob much. He was really quiet. I talked to the record producer, Chris Blackwell. And then a week later, they said, "We're going to get in touch with you later on in the week." So a week later, they called me to have a meeting with Bob. So this is when I officially met Bob Marley at this time. It was November 1973. And he said, "Look, man, I really like what you played. Would you come and live with me and produce music in Jamaica?" And I said, "I'm not really sure about that. I just had a young son born, but I want to be able to I need a steady job to financially take care of my young son that was born up in Newcastle, and I'm living in London. That's a long way to go.
Yeah.
So I have to have something really steady." So he said, "I've got something really steady for you. We're going to tour for years. We're going to develop the music." And because I wasn't familiar with Bob Marley and the Wailers, Peter and Bunny, it was Paul Kossoff that played Catch a Fire and Burning that got me hip on what they do.
What they were doing, because you're kind of like more of the Traffic and a little bit more on the rock side of things, and just starting to lean into it. So it would have been okay.
There was this big, like, split, laid back vibe happening with Bob's music, which I dug.
Yeah.
I said, "This is really cool." And so I eventually said yes. And so maybe about a week, 10 days later, I flew from Heathrow, not to Jamaica, straight to Bob Marley's mother's house, where I lived with him and his brother, 2 brothers and sister, and his mother for like 6-8 months. And then when it was time to go to Jamaica to get all the publicity together for the Not to Dread album, I ended up at Hope Road Studios. And now I'm a Wailer.
Yeah.
December 1973, I'm with Bob Marley and the Wailers.
What a huge experience for you in life, going from where you were in New York to London, and then over to London again. Another huge life change for you personally.
Boston, New York, Boston, London.
Oh,
Boston, nothing like New York. It's a completely different place.
and it would have like not only had a huge impact on you personally, but creatively as a musician, kind of going into London at that time, then coming over to Jamaica and Kingston and kind of taking in that whole scene again. And socially, it would have been another step in another direction as well, to kind of be see what's going on.
Yeah, it was like different planets.
Yeah.
And then you got to Jamaica, where everything kind of slowed down. Because when I got to Jamaica, they hadn't packaged the distribution for how they wanted Bob to look for Naughty Dread, because they knew this. I thought I was coming to work with the iconic 3, Bunner, Bob, and Peter. But then Bob told me that he was not going to be including them in his solo career. So I literally got to Jamaica thinking, "Oh man, I'm in the Wailers."
Yeah.
But I've been Bob Marley in the Wailers, not Peter, Bob, and Bunny's Wailers. And so that was a big shock to know that it was all about Bob at that time, and he was kind of ending his relationship with the earlier group that made him pretty much as famous as he was in the early 70s. So it slowed down to like 1.5 years waiting. It was about 12 to 15 months before they released Naughty Dread. And then I got to learn the language. I got to go to the beach every day. I didn't do nothing. I lived like Jamaicans did. Big mangoes, pineapples, this beach life and incredible food. And it was just really interesting how there was nothing happening. He didn't rehearse much at this time. He was pretty much waiting for Island Records to package him, like all the photography. Yeah. And we had a video, which was Lively Up Yourself, the first video. I remember doing that before I left London and never knowing to see it till maybe a few years ago. And that's like, 50 years, nearly 47 years. Now I'm seeing yourself as a video from that time when I was really young and just joined them. So it was, there wasn't a lot going on until they released No Woman, No Cry.
Okay. That would have been
And
a
then
fun time, relaxing time, but also a little bit stagnating as a musician
it
for
was,
you as well, to go from everything happening to London and getting over and just kicking back on the beach, smoking some weed and eating some
yeah,
mangoes and shit.
it was a long vacation,
Yep.
but I got really physically fit.
Yep.
Because Bob played soccer every single day.
Yeah.
And it's him I learned how to play soccer. He introduced me to soccer, pretty much. He was he was really into playing football. He loved ball. He loved Pele. He loved all the Brazilian teams. He loved all the guys from the early British football giants. I didn't know them, but he did, because I know another kind of football.
Yeah.
You know soccer and
I
rugby.
know, because we're Australia. You're like, you rugby, like you're wearing the All Blacks jersey, the Guernsey there, Guernsey. Pardon me. I do. We've got the rugby league here, and everyone calls it soccer as well, but it's football. It's originally football, people.
Yeah. And they're some of the strongest guys. And in Jamaica, Bob got he wasn't a real tall lad, but he was strong as heck.
Yep.
And he taught me the game. And then, Nazi Dread was released. And then for 10 years straight, just touring, recording, one after another, Rastaman Vibration, all the albums we did, Survival, Exodus, Live at Lyceum.
Yep.
Just recording, touring, and that's all we did. That's all we ever did. And Bob really never got a day off after the success of Nazi Dread.
Oh, wow.
He was busy writing, and he was building the studio, Hope Road Studios. He bought Hope Road Studios from Chris Blackwell from Island Record, because that was Island House, and it became Tough Gun Studios. So we were producing and arranging Bob's music in an in-house studio for years after year, touring every year, and it got hot.
Yeah.
It got really busy, and for that big long vacation was long.
Long after it was well needed then, and it was a different time with all the touring and the records and the vinyl. The music industry today is so much different. You know what I mean? You would, you
absolutely
noticed all of the changes. It'd just be crazy to think back then, as I was saying before, you wouldn't be able to do the things that you were doing back then to now.
No.
So it's a little harder for those musicians coming through and kind of getting into this industry. Yeah.
And I'm really thankful that I had gone through that opportunity and suffered, because it wasn't like London, and it wasn't like the States. It wasn't like Boston. It wasn't like New York. It was Jamaica was, they're just coming into their independence.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of change going on from political parties and the strength of politics. And Bob had this incredible magnetism over the whole island.
Yeah.
Whoever he supported would become like prime minister, because of him being his music. Our music was like a newspaper to those people who couldn't read.
Well, that music today has as much impact today as it did back then as well. You could put that on, and those lyrics are just as impactful today and just as meaningful today as they were back then. Did you guys know that you were, I suppose you probably didn't, but did you know then that you were building a legacy, that you'd be sitting here in 2023 with, a metalhead talking about how this impacted my formative career? You know what I mean? Like, it's a huge legacy. And at the time, you probably didn't realize what you were building. Yeah. Or did you?
That's the diverse thing. That's the magic and the beauty of music, that I'm talking to somebody who loves music, and especially like hard music, and at the same time, softer music that is meaningful. So you got a lot of heart for the culture of music, and at the same time, the cultures of diverse artists. I'm sure you love American music and African music, Jamaican music, and
I interviewed Michael Gabriel a while ago. He plays with Sheila E. Yeah, unreal. He's Prince's godson. He's His
Oh gosh.
father was blue. I'm kicking myself now. His father runs a funk and blues label as well, but he was Prince's godson. He was an unreal guy. I love the kind of different sorts of music. Yeah, I'm a mad metalhead, but I do love blues, soul, funk, jazz, all that kind of stuff. You know, folk music. It's like I'm having a chat with after I chat with you, Al. I'm interviewing Suffocation, one of the guys from Suffocation, and Terrence Hobbs. He was one of the earlier guys of color to kind of get into death metal and kind of build a career around that. So it's like I'm interviewing you, that I'm jumping over and interview Suffocation. For me, it's just it's a joy to listen to all sorts of music, and it would be a joy for you to be able to bring this to all these people all over the world, and also be able to tour still, like, and to kind of bring this music and the legacy and the career that you have and have helped build to people all over the world, and a joy.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I wanted to ask you a question. Is Dimebag Darrell one of your favorites?
Yeah, he was unreal. He was an unreal guitarist. I have so many favorites. It's unreal. It's the thing about music, isn't it? You just them. You just I don't like to lock myself into one thing.
Michael Schenker's dangerous too.
Oh yeah, unreal.
Rammstein, just
yeah,
scorpions.
Michael Amott, I interview the guitarist, and that's the thing too. Like your generation of guitarists and musicians, like jazz and soul, and even before then, that's kind of the base of everything. You were talking about going from jazz and rock, and that is definitely the base for everything. Anyone that tries to tell me different, I'm just going to disagree straight up.
Yeah, it's got to start somewhere.
Yeah. That's it. Okay, we better wind up. You've I did. How much more time have you got there, Al? A little bit more time, or are we just about
Much as you have.
Okay, they're cool. I did want to ask about a couple of the other artists you did work with as well, because I know Bob and the original Wailers wasn't the only artist you've worked through with your career, yeah?
Sure. Ben Harper
Ben Harper, that's the one I want to touch on. And Lauryn Hill as well, I believe.
did the Lauryn Hill tours of her after she left Fugees, went solo. She grabbed onto me and a bunch of other really killing jazz musicians out of New York and put a funk band together. That band, I got a lot of respect for Lauryn because she has been going through severe pressure, and she was the #1 artist in the world when I was working with her.
Yeah,
like we were doing like large numbers in Tokyo, and we could have toured every day of her life if she wanted to, but she wanted a family and really ground herself with her songwriting, and she wanted peace, and because she was turning over such large numbers, money can really mess things up.
definitely. There are
when
things in life that are more important than money, and that's something that's come up for me a little bit lately, more so like since been battling cancer. It's about building kind of a legacy, and being happy in yourself and being grounded and leaving spiritually, being connected within yourself as well.
Yes, you have to get that time where it's not all money, it's not all friends, it's not all party, it's just you. It's like Zen. You get this opportunity to go inside yourself and be one with yourself and really enjoy that on the one with yourself to share with everyone else. Ben was a really great guy to work with. He gave me the opportunity to tour with him in Pearl Jam and stuff. That was really killer. Lauryn, I traveled around the world with her for 2 years straight. I stayed in her house for like 2 or 3 months, recording and doing overdubs and stuff, and doing a bunch of tracks that are unreleased with her. I did Supernatural with her and Carlos Santana.
Oh yeah, nice.
Which was amazing. And I opened up for Traffic. I played with Free and, Frank Zappa, Fleetwood Mac, and, man, I'm the happiest guy in the world when I look at my past and my present.
Yeah.
The only thing that would have been better that I can honestly say about my career is that the record companies that the musicians of the Wailers were responsible for all of Bob's production, all the hit songs, all the recordings, all the tours. The record company didn't pay everybody. You know, it goes back to finances. And it's not like a downer, other than that is good for the children's children, and it's good for health. It's good for, you know, accommodations. Musicians need money.
Yeah, and musicians are still getting fucking ripped by the record companies and the digital platforms now. You know what I mean? Like with the Spotify, look, it's great to have everyone being able to get access to your music. Like it's really great to have that, but they need to pay the artists better than what they're doing. There has to be a better way than what is happening.
Easy. It's easy. It's a thing called annually, either every quarter or every 6 months, every year, whatever you contributed to, whatever you helped produce, which for me, during my reign with Bob Marley, let's say, because I felt like, man, this group is on top. I didn't feel on top. I felt like Bob Marley and the Wailers were on top, you know. And it did so much for me to know that my small contribution did a lot to help Bob's get his music to the right people. You know, people when they were doing Catch a Fire and Burning, there was a lead guitarist named Wayne Perkins, and that was Bobby Womack's guy. And he was a Nashville like studio cat who was an ace. He played Concrete Jungle. So right there, I went like, wow, I've never heard that in reggae music. And so I wanted to do something that hadn't been heard either. And that was my influence. And as we worked for all those years, 8, 9, 10 years, and all the live albums and all the royalties never went back to the Wailers to help build their life and their families like it did Bob's family and all the CEOs of Island and all the people that said that they produced Bob's music when they didn't. The band did. Yeah. So, like, I would just say that my big message is to all you young guitar players and all you young musicians out there, make sure that if you have a group and all of a sudden you have like interest from a record company, interest from management, interest from some entertainment company that wants to take your services to the world, make sure that you get a proper piece of it. And all that is having right counseling and signing the right documents. And then you can even sign the right documents and have the right counseling and still go through some changes. But as long as you have your footprint legally on all the documents that you're responsible for, you'll get paid. And that's what I loved about the music business. Because when I met Randy Jackson, Michael's brother, I said, Randy, how you doing? He goes, not so good. And I said, you? He goes, man, we got ripped off. And I was going, yeah, we went through a lot of changes too. So like my message is to young musicians and to any artists out there, make sure that your songs belong to you, your merchandise belongs to you, and your name belongs to you. That's the most important 3 key essential things that a young or an experienced musician that hasn't seen success and that has seen some promises he needs to engage for his future, for him, his family, you know, and that's the most important thing, that you know there's something there for you that you've worked your whole life for. Because I had 50 years in touring with Bob Marley and Wailers and selling Bob Marley and Wailers music worldwide. It looks like maybe 700-800 million CDs sold or something.
Yeah.
In that astronomical, you know, realm of like, wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of success here that could have been shared, but because of, you know, record companies are greedy. Managers are greedy.
Yeah.
You know, you got to, I was lucky and I found Robbie Duderman out of Florida. I used to do a lot of touring down there, and he was always like a really cool arranger. He put on a lot of really good shows. He was an agent, and he took interest in me and the band and my career. And it's just, he's really fair.
Yeah.
He, you know, we cut it up, and everybody, the executive management gets theirs, the personal management gets theirs, all the band members get theirs. Everybody gets their slice. So there's never any ill, feeling towards what you're doing. Because if you're not getting paid and you're seeing like I have diamond jubilees, I have platinum records and everything. I don't have 1 cent to represent that.
Yeah.
And there's something wrong with that.
Oh, definitely.
If you don't agree with me, that's your opinion. My opinion is I need to have a better life for all the betterment that has come to what I've, contributed to.
You work, you get paid. You go to work, you say you're a laborer, contractor, or even you're in a bakery, you work all week, you get paid at the end of the week. You should get paid for your work, regardless of what you do. Musicians should get paid as well. They bring so much joy to everybody's life. I've always been one to support the scene, vinyl, records, going to tours. Concerts are really important. I do want to touch on the New Zealand tour and the Aussie tour quickly as well. I think I can share this one. Let me share this, people. Let you get on your way. New Zealand tour. We've already sold out Wellington on the 11th and the 10th, Auckland Power Station. Let's sell that one out, people. Looking forward to getting over to New Zealand as well, yeah?
New Zealand and Australia is God's country.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's God's country. Every time I go there, I'm being cast back to early England, early America. It's like you got mom and pop guitar stores there. You got beaches, fish and chips, good jar of brew.
Yeah.
And it's not, especially New Zealand. Australia is being built up.
Yeah.
Really investing. Like the last time, which was about 8 months ago when I was in Sydney, I looked around and went like, what? It was like Miami.
Yeah.
But I'm coming from the 70s of being in Australia, New Zealand, like the Gold Coast, Brisbane, Melbourne, all these. You got mom and pop shops. You know what I mean? You got like fish and chip shops that, they don't have a lot of those around here where I am in LA. They're there, but not like, that European influence that, the people from Europe that they brought their culture there. And,
well, we do. It's a huge multicultural country. It's just, like you said, like it's just massive. It's Australia in general, and it's also made us kind of a really laid back society as well.
Yeah.
We don't get all wound up, and as you guys are coming into the election season, it's got to be like, fuck this, we're going out to tour everywhere else. Let's not be in America at this time, because Americans get so wound up about politics. In Australia, we know both sides are trying to take advantage, or we're going to get screwed over by one party or the next. There's hardly any politicians that are out there doing the right thing for us, so we don't get so bought up in it. But in America, it's just a crazy, crazy time.
Too many people doing too many wrong things.
Yes.
And we need to come together as a country and as a people, number one. Because when we're together, we're all together.
Yeah.
Not just really, or it's plural, because it's the human race. And never forget that. Where were you born?
I'm from the world, man. I was born in the world. I'm from Earth. We're all one. That's what I get it. I'm American, I'm Australian. We're all one people, dude. Like it's, I was born in Australia, but like we're all one people. We all bleed the same. We're all the same. We all want the same things. We all just want to live, love, respect each other, and look after our kids and our family. We all basically want the same things.
What I realized when I was going out a lot in Australia or all over the place socially, I saw unity.
Yep.
People were chatting and having a jar and just bar and grill, taking in the game. And we do too, but it seemed the unity part of it was really nice. And I really like just walking around and taking in like Aboriginal art, local art. I really like the Gold Coast. Man, it's a throwback for us because it's not overly produced, It's not like you go to New York and you go to Times Square and you go like, fuck, here comes Godzilla, It's just like it's mammoth production of whatever,
Yeah.
whatever movie, whatever uh,
Nope.
football game is there. It's just like it's a mammoth thing that when you're in Australia, everything seems to be in front of you, but it's not overbearing. It's
Yeah.
like very comfortable. And then I like the shops, the little thrift shops. You can go in and buy some little neat thing from back in like the 80s or something. And especially the guitar stores.
Yeah.
Man, mom and pop vintage guitar stores that are still here. Because I think COVID did a lot of damage to everybody.
It did. It shut up. It shut up a lot of those stores. A lot of venues shut up as well through COVID. And, more and more now there's less music shops to go actually buy records and things like that as well.
Yeah. Oh, I got a vinyl piece for you for our single. We have 3 songs. One is the first release. I don't know if you saw this. It was done in Bali. It's called Song of the Divine.
Okay.
That's our first. Did you see that?
Yes,
video?
I did. Yes. I was over on the website. That was absolutely amazing. I went over to Bali. That was the first country I actually went internationally. Last year, I finally got my ass together after COVID. It's beautiful over there. The people are just absolutely amazing. Amazing people. Beautiful people.
Yeah. Zen Central,
Yeah.
I call it. So we were able to go into temples. We met priests, and as we were doing the video, they showed us love. Their sect showed us, they're Buddhist. They showed us love. They blessed us with coconut water, flowers. They let us use their temples. They fed us. We met the elders. It was like, wow, this is what I really want. And the second one is Si Tu Me Lo Das, which is in a love song, but it's in Espanol. And it's got a lot of Latin influence with reggae in it.
Yep.
And the third one is Pierda por Pierda, which means brick by brick, stone by stone. We build our world back to strength.
Yep.
That's our next release. And so we have 3 songs, 2 in the chamber and 1 ready to go into the target. So look out, our fans and friends. We have another song in Espanol, Pierda por Pierda. That's a big word, but the name of our album is Mirror of Heaven.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Because we were in Reunion. We had a big party on the beach, and coming back to our hotel, we looked out on the water of the island, and it was a sunset day where the sun came down, and it was like a complete cross, in a sunset cross all over the whole ocean. And I had my camera there, and I caught it. And if you see the promotion for Mirror of Heaven,
yep,
that sunset, that iconic sunset, and that's the name of the album. It'll be like a 8-song EP, and we should have it out in the new year.
Awesome.
The original way, featuring myself. Mirror of Heaven is the name of the album. Song of the Divine, and Si Tu Me Lo Das, which is a Latin love song that we have available now.
I'm glad you pronounced it, because I would have just annihilated it with my Aussie accent. So cheers, Al. Thank you so very much. Everybody get along and grab those albums. Grab the album Mirror of Heaven when it does drop, the EP.
Please come and say hello, because I got a vinyl for you. I have our first single on vinyl we've never had before. Awesome. Our first. So I got one for you.
Awesome, Al. That is an absolute pleasure. I will hold you to that, my friend. Thank you so very much for joining me. Everybody get along and catch Al.
Oh, this has been a really good interview. Thank you so much. My brother, John.
No worries. Thank you very much, brother. Thank you very much. Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Oi, you're tuned in to Jai, That Aussie Metal Guy, so make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of his sick content. And remember, stay brutal, you legend.